When it comes to trying palm cooling or heat dumping without spending a ton of money, but using something that actually works, there haven't been many great options in the past. But I think I finally found one. It's the Therabody RecoveryTherm Cube. The funny thing is, this isn't even meant to be a palm cooling device. It's a contrast machine, which means that it does hot and cold, and it does it thermoelectrically. There are 6 preset hot and cold settings that the machine sticks to. 3 hot and 3 cold, and one of the cold settings I found is set to 54 degrees, which is actually the perfect temperature for palm cooling, because you need the coldest temperature that you can get without getting so cold that it causes the blood vessels in your palms to close. So I got really excited when I saw the temperature, and I bought one. It's usually $149, but it was on sale for $129. And as soon as it arrived, I tried it a couple times, and I went back and bought another, and I'll tell you why in a second. And it's been incredible. First, I decided to do a little experiment with it. I know it's not a randomized control trial, but I've been doing several different workouts for months now, so I have a pretty good idea of what I can usually do. And for one of these workouts, I do 4 different exercises, 4 sets of each. So I'm doing 16 total sets, and I do them in a circuit. So in my experiment, on the days that I would do this workout, which would be every 3-4 days, on some days I wouldn't do any palm cooling. On other days, I would do the first 3 rounds without palm cooling, and then palm cool on the last round only. And then on some days, I would do palm cooling between each set. And I did that for several weeks. And these are my results, divided up by each of the 4 exercises. So for exercise A, you'll see that the blue line is when I didn't do any palm cooling at all. And this is kind of what I'd been seeing before I started this experiment. The number of reps I would do would gradually decrease with each set. The red line is when I would do no palm cooling for the first 3 sets, and you'd see the gradual decline, and then I'd palm cool before the last set. And you can see how the reps jump back up, even though it's at the end of my workout. The yellow line is when I would palm cool between all my sets. And this is the crazy thing. The number of reps I did hardly changed. So if you go through the graphs of the other 3 exercises, you see pretty much the same thing. So how is this happening? If you haven't heard of palm cooling or heat dumping, here's a quick summary. With all the studies that have been done, it's been shown that fatigue is caused by internal heat. When it gets too hot inside the muscles, those muscles fatigue. When they're working, muscles produce heat, and throughout your entire workout, your internal temperature is gradually increasing because more heat is accumulating than you can radiate out. And the palms of your hands are the places where internal heat can be transferred or dumped out most efficiently based off the structure of the blood vessels that are found there. So you're just keeping your internal temperature low enough so that your muscles can work longer before it gets too hot inside and your muscles fatigue. So going back to the charts, for the blue line where I didn't palm cool at all, heat is gradually building up over time. So the body can't do as many reps before it hits fatigue as I go along. For the red line, when I didn't palm cool for the first 3 sets and only did it before the 4th set, the same thing happens as the blue line for the first 3 sets. But then you clear out the heat for the last set, and you see that your muscles have a longer runway to work before they fatigue. So I ended up being able to do more reps in my last set. And for the yellow line where I cooled my palms between each set, you're just constantly maintaining a cooler internal temperature so you can keep doing almost the same number of reps for each set before fatiguing. I know that the placebo effect is real, and I'm not blinded in this experiment, so I know I'm using something different that's supposed to help. But I really tried to approach the exercises the same way each time. I'd go to fatigue, I'd work out the same time every day, temperature in the room was the same, the rest breaks were all the same, my sleep and hydration, overall health were all similar. So take it with a grain of salt if you'd like, and I get being skeptical, but similar results have been shown in multiple studies, and honestly, this is kind of hard to explain away completely with just, it's in your head. So what did I do? Okay. So these are the Therabody devices, and like I mentioned earlier, I bought 2, and the reason for that was that I could double the heat that I can dump at the same time by having 1 in each palm. And buying 2 of these was still way less expensive than the other devices I know about. So you turn them on by holding the button with a snowflake on it, and once it turns on, you press it 1 more time so that you get 2 blue lights on. That's the setting you want, that's 54 degrees. And once you've got both of them on, you'll see that there's a blue surface, and this is where it'll get cold. And on the other side, you have a fan. And on 2 sides, you have vents as well. On the top, you have the buttons, but on the opposite side, there's nothing. So what I'll do is I'll put the cold blue side against my palm, and I put the control buttons facing me. This way, the side fans keep from getting blocked and your fingers won't accidentally press a button on the top. Another thing is that the top fan is curved, so even if you put it up against something, you won't completely block it. So I'll do one of two things. If I'm sitting on a bench or a chair during my breaks, I'll just hold the two pressed together like this. The fan isn't completely blocked and it's easy to rest them against each other. Maybe you're not supposed to do this, I don't know, but I haven't had an issue with it yet. And each of these weigh about 3/4 of a pound, so it's really easy to hold like this. Or the other way I'll use them is to have them resting on a counter, blue side up, and I'll just lay my palms on top of them. You don't want to push down too hard on them, don't lean into them, put body weight on them, because the pressure can close the blood vessels in your palms too. And then I just hold it there for however long my normal rest break would be. I think the recommendation from most companies is to hold it for at least 1.5 minutes, but I don't usually take breaks that long. So for you, I just do this for however long you would normally take a break. Now, after I'm done with my break, I just leave them running. I don't turn them off. I just go do my next exercise. And once you've turned them on, they'll stay on for 18 minutes before they turn off automatically. But if that happens, just turn it back on again and reset it to the second cold setting, and it gets cold pretty quickly. So people have asked me what it feels like to use them. And when you use these, they feel slightly cool, but not necessarily cold. Your hands don't feel numb or anything like that after you finish using it. Honestly, it doesn't feel like you've done much. I think some people see the results from the studies and think that they'll feel super refreshed or feeling stronger after doing it. But from my experience, you're not going to feel any different than how you started before your workout. So for example, if you didn't get a good night's sleep the night before, it's not like doing this is going to make you suddenly feel more energetic or like you can run through a brick wall or anything. And honestly, when I pick up the weights for my next set, I'm thinking, man, these are heavy, and I wonder how many I'm going to be able to do. But as I go along and I get closer to where I know I should be getting tired, I don't, and I'm able to keep going, which is amazing. They plug into a USB-C cord. I didn't like having separate cords for each of my devices, so I just bought a cord on Amazon that splits, and you can plug both into the same cord. And that's one less thing you have to take when you travel. And when they're fully charged, they last for 2 hours. Like I mentioned earlier, they're super light, small, so I can actually carry both in one hand. They also fit into the pockets of some shorts that I wear. And they come with Velcro straps. So I've actually figured out a way to strap both of them together to make it even easier to carry, but I've never even had to do that. The only downside to these is that in theory, you can't use them when it's too hot outside. If the temperature around it is hotter than what's coming out of the vents, you can't diffuse the heat and the cold surface won't be able to get cold. So using it in anything over about 85 degrees is supposed to be iffy. But I actually had them running outside in the shade in 85-degree temperatures the other day, and they stayed around 60 degrees for an hour, which I measured, which is pretty impressive. And like I mentioned, the battery lasts for 2 hours. If you're using them for longer than 2 hours, the battery might not be able to stay on that long. But most workouts I do are under 2 hours, so that's not an issue for me. And if you're planning to use it for something longer than 2 hours, you can probably save battery life by turning it off when you're not using it. So compared to the few other devices out there that actually work, I love these because they're so low maintenance. Just takes a plug and a charge. No water, no tubes, no ice, nothing to freeze. They're hands down the smallest and lightest devices out there. And from a performance standpoint, it actually gets and holds the best temperature. Most of the other devices don't actually get quite as cold as these. And if you buy two, you get to pull heat out of both palms at the same time, which you can't even do with all the devices. They cost a lot more. And even with two, you're going to spend about $300 compared to the $500 to $1,000 with the other products that are out there. So even though I think Therabody may have done this completely accidentally, I'm so glad they exist and that I found them. It's turned out to be the palm cooling device that I use almost every day personally. And as you've seen with my charts, it works for me. The other palm cooling devices that I've referred to will completely work. They have their own strengths and weaknesses, but they're just more expensive. So if anyone out there has heard about palm cooling and wants to give it a try without paying so much, I'd highly recommend starting here.